How's the website coming?
Oh, not so great today.
No?
I was too still pumped up from last night to do
Yeah.
anything,
Okay.
or early this morning, I should say, to really do anything, but I hope to get to it tomorrow.
Okay. Sounds good. Welcome inside the Hair Press Box. Alyssa has said that she's going to look into getting us a website. So we'll take the next step in becoming big time with that. I'm going to leave that in her hands
Mhm,
until she needs my help, but I think she'll be all right. So you mentioned that game last night.
mhm.
I know there's a lot to talk about that we could talk about that game. Great match, great gold medal match where the U.S. pulls out a shootout victory over rival Canada, a game where both of us admittedly had given up fairly early on, early second period, I guess,
Mhm,
is
mhm.
midway through the second, being
Yeah.
lenient on ourselves. U.S. storms back and just a complete undressing
Yeah.
that Jocelyn Lamoureux put on the world class Canadian goalie
Yeah.
to be the deciding goal to end that. Last week we had our hockey expert Marcus on. We talked hockey. I assume we'll do the same thing in the near future and let him come on and recap this Olympic gold medal match, the Olympics in general, and then the NCAA tournament, which will soon be starting after conference tournaments start this upcoming weekend, I believe, and also the NWHL will soon be in their playoff sessions. But is there any notes you want to hit on tonight before we sort of pass that baton on to that full recap hockey episode that we'll have later on?
No, I think I'm good for now.
Okay. Yeah, great match. One that's definitely worth talking about. And there are a handful of other things we'll touch on tonight, but we'll definitely give uh, the due respect that match last night did deserve.
Mhm.
A couple of things that we wanted to hit on, and actually, I do have one thing that I wanted to bring up, talk about, and I know you tweeted about it from the account,
Okay.
um, and I started to think this during her interview after her last supposedly last run. I do not think Lindsey Vaughn is done at the Olympics.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I don't think she is either. I think that this
Mhm.
one was just an extremely emotional one, especially with the passing of her grandfather, and I know that's been talked about a lot. So I think for her, um, it was emotional on that side of things, but I had this funny feeling that I don't think it's it, especially with the way that it ended. I don't think that she
Mhm.
could, the competitor that she is, I don't think she can walk away just saying, yeah, that's it for me.
Mhm.
I don't know. I mean, and she may end up, I have a feeling what's going to happen is she's going to break the World Cup record. Then she's going to probably stick around for a little bit longer, retire. Then 2 years down the road, she's going to come back. So I think she's going to retire and then come back and start training for the Olympics.
Mhm.
I just don't see it as her last Olympics. But if it is, then props to her. She's an amazing athlete, one of the greatest athletes of all time in my mind. So, one Olympics and the way it ended isn't going to define her whole career.
Yeah, and I could see sort of that timeline happening for her and her returning in 4 years or
Mm-hmm.
sort of thinking it over, right? And then
Right.
coming back.
Yeah.
Lindsey Vaughn, age of 33, so she'd be 37 at the next Olympics. Doing the math there, and already breaking records for oldest competitor and
Right.
doing what she's done. Um,
Right.
and yeah, I still think she has some in the tank, and just sort of the way she was responding to those questions, and just completely overcome with emotion and yeah, from a, I mean, you can go out on top from a success standpoint, and I think I felt like her words were coming out from a personal emotional. Okay, this is the peak of where I am. I mean, this is like I did this for these reasons, and you know, like you said, thumbs up for her for that, and she checked those boxes and she did it, and did it in truly Lindsey Vonn form of being on the podium. But yeah, kind of, I think she does look at it from a competitor standpoint now, and I believe that she'll be back in 4 years. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't doubt that.
Yeah, and I just wanted to make a note on that. Other things that we wanted to talk about. So they're on the other realm of the sports world. Today marks a historic moment in the U.S. sports world. And a question I pose to you, there is a Sports Illustrated article that lists the top 100 sports moments in U.S. history or the world history. I can't remember if it's national, international, and a few of them, these from our athletes and our sports, are listed on there. I pose the same question to you. What is that defining moment? Is there a defining moment? Do you have a few to rank? What are your thoughts on these monumental events in sports?
Yeah, are we going with as terms of like national teams or national individuals? Are we talking across the board?
Anything.
Across the board.
Anything.
So you to me, you pose the question of what's our miracle on ice. So as far as that goes, the first thing that immediately popped into my mind was last night's game. But for me, to be an equivalent of miracle on ice, you have to be extreme underdogs. And I don't think we were extreme underdogs. I think we were underdogs for sure and going into the game last night. But that may have just been how we looked at it versus how the players looked at it. Then I thought back to last year's NCAA tournament when UConn lost. It just showed that they're human and they have the ability to lose. So those were really the two that came to mind right off the bat. Obviously, the Women's World Cup when we first won it, and then winning it again, and then winning it again. Those are all things that switch the mindset of people, that actually draw people in and then keep them in because it's on this big national stage. And not that we were underdogs in the World Cups, but they changed the way that people viewed the sport, and it got people involved. So in a way, it was monumental. Maybe not in an upset fashion, but still big wins.
Working backwards on that Sports Illustrated list, no credit to Sports Illustrated. Just they're very lucky that I even used their article to speak from on this topic. But working backwards, so number 84, the Sports Illustrated article for greatest moments in our sports history. At 84, Mary Lou Retton earns perfect tens in the 84 Olympics for the U.S. Number 81, Gertrude Ederle swims across the English Channel in 1926. She beat the record by a couple of hours. Her time was 14 hours and 31 minutes to swim across the English Channel. Number 73, 90 in a row for UConn as they won their 90th game in a row, which would set the record at the time. And that was December of 2010. Number 67 on that list was Carly Lloyd's hat trick versus Japan in 2015 World Cup final, which came in the first 15, 16 minutes of that match. Number 59 on the list, the first perfect 10 from a 14-year-old Romanian, Nadia Comaneci, and that was in 1976. She wound up earning 7 perfect 10s in that Olympic event. And the top event for our athletes, our sports, was at number 24, Brandi Chastain.
Wow. What's number 1?
I don't know. I took it off my computer and I deleted it from my browser history. So,
so no one knows. No one will know.
So a couple of those are from soccer, right? 2 of those.
Yeah.
Carly Lloyd and Brandy Chastain were
Yeah.
those top 100. To get into a little NWSL talk, preseason is underway. These schedules have been announced. Preseason rosters are out. Everything is seeming to be set up. The TV schedule has been announced. I haven't looked at it a whole lot. Basically, the only thing that I've seen is Chris Henderson's comments about Seattle not having a scheduled televised game throughout the year. He was riled up about that, and for good reason, I would say. He was talking about how you can sort of, how would you be able to expect sponsors to pick up this team when they would never get any advertisement
and it's
on national television?
Yeah, it's not like they're a last place team. They have a ton of talent on that roster. Interesting.
A couple other notes. Maya Hayes will be taking the year off to complete her master's degree. So out for the 2018 season is Maya Hayes to complete studies. There was an article last week that I had directed you to, and I don't have anything else to say to it other than I'd assume he was speaking along the lines that I was speaking from. If you did get a chance to read it, Corey Ropkin had his article titled "NWSL's Long-Term Viability Boosted with Folding of Boston Breakers." Did you get a chance to read that?
I actually did not, no.
Okay. And I assume that's a good article that I'd like to read, and I assume he was kind of thinking along the same brainwaves as we discussed on here, as far as getting these franchises into the right hands, into owners who care and are going to give everything they can to keep these teams, which we saw sort of fall through with the Boston Breakers.
Yep.
So article to keep your eye on there from Corey Ropkin, who we've had mentioned on this podcast before as the Houston Dash beat writer. A couple other things to note. The allocations were released for 2018. Any surprises with those?
I would have to re-look at them.
So no LaRue, no Krieger, no Klingenberg.
Which you knew LaRue and Krieger weren't getting it. This just goes all back to you're going to get me all going back to Jill Ellis.
NC Courage with 6 allocated players, 2 of them Canadians with Alicia Chapman and Sabrina D'Angelo. What are you looking at now? Allocations?
Yep, I'm just trying to find all of them.
Diana Matheson shows up on the allocations for Canada, which is a good sign for her coming back from a torn ACL. So that's a good sign, showing that she's recovered from that injury and will be ready to go for the now Utah Royals.
I guess maybe one U.S. player that was a little bit surprised off that was left off is Andy Sullivan.
Yeah, bit of a surprise. The now NWSL rookie was left off that list.
Right, yeah. I'm just kind of searching through here again.
And these players, just to expand on that allocation list, these players will have their salaries paid by the national team in order to let the National Women's Soccer League basically keep their payments in check, so they're not paying out of pocket for these stars that would be earning the top salaries in the league. So national teams, Canada and U.S. helping out pay those salaries, keeping those players here at home as opposed to letting them leave more frequently for bigger money overseas. And maybe a player on here, or maybe any player in general for you that you're looking forward to see play, excited to see play, interested to see play.
Multiple players for sure, especially after the W League. But I think the first player that popped into my mind when you asked me that question, and it's kind of ironic given that I wasn't a big fan of her last season in the NWSL, but Fishlock. I'm really excited to see what she does this season. I know I told you this. She's one of those players that you love having her as a teammate, but if you have to go up against her, she's one of those players that can get under your skin because she's going after everything and she's not going at it at 50%. She's going at 100% every single time. And then there's so many players coming from the W League into the NWSL that I'm excited to see.
Yeah, Fishlock in a crowded midfield for Seattle. Fishlock, Morgan Andrews, Stephanie Ribeiro, who is coming back from injury. I expected big things from her last year. She got hurt, so was unable to perform, but she's also in that midfield. Rachel Corboz, the undrafted rookie from Georgetown, will be in on that mix. Shannon Simon, who's a potential starter for a handful of teams in the league. She's maybe at the bottom, even behind Stephanie Verdoya. And Ali Long is also there, and a few other names that I can't assume make the roster with that stacked midfield. But we'll see. Yeah, we'll see where Fishlock fits in in the Reign system. A couple of players that I mentioned, and a couple of them are biased picks. One sort of unbiased, still a big fan, but Rachel Hill in Orlando.
Yeah.
Interested to see how she is able to sort of put her mark on this team. So now she has LaRue and Morgan in that same position as her. We saw Hill score plenty last year and looked to be a clear top prospect in the league. And for the Pride to go out and make these moves, in my mind, strange for them to do that.
Right.
And, you know, along with Danica Evans, who might get pushed back now. They're also in a forward position. That's a crowded position as well, just like Seattle's midfield. So
and Rachel Hill is coming off a great W League season too. So even more so strange that Orlando made the moves that they made. And maybe they're just essentially stockpiling for next season. See what kind of moves they can make with players, or even during the season, I guess, too.
The spot that LaRue left in Utah has my eye on one of my favorites there, as Brittany Ratcliffe will see extended minutes, especially there in Utah, because it looks like it's going to on their preseason roster. So now, as far as forwards go, they have Ratcliffe, Megan Kelly, Katie Stengel, and Elise Thorsnes. And that is and A-Rod, who
is coming back,
getting no younger, but definitely will be making an impact, most likely from coming off the bench. But I can easily see Brittany Ratcliffe getting a majority of those minutes there from a forward position.
Yeah, and then, I would say Stengel and her would be. I like both of those people together.
Final player that I want to mention, as far as sort of, again, a biased opinion, but I think it's an obvious answer, and that's Rose Lavelle, now moving over to the Washington Spirit. Now she has Mallory Pugh and Ariel Shipp out ahead of her, along with Ashley Hatch, who they made a trade for. So it's I don't know what the record for assists are in the NWSL, but she might be set up very nicely to change that record this season, given that she stays healthy, which has been her biggest issue so far.
Yep. Well, hopefully she's back to health now with being called up to the U.S. camp.
Yeah. Hopefully that's a sign, right? All the preseason rosters have now been released, as was mentioned, and the schedules are released. We're going to the Dash Red Star game. What if the Dash start off 0-4?
I'll still go. I just probably won't sport a Dash t-shirt.
You've been mentioning the W League. Do we get an update on the sort of how that ended, or have you need a minute to go over that?
Yeah, I just need to still calm down from that one too. No, Melbourne City took it 2-0. Goal by Fishlock, and then by Jody Taylor. And Fishlock scored, I think, around the 35th minute, and then Jody Taylor scored later into the second half. It wasn't as chippy as the NWSL game till the NWSL championship game until the end, because it was still close. It still was that 1-0 lead, and then it changed. After that, I should double check. I think Jody and Taylor, I wonder if they scored in the first half. Both goals might have been in the first half. But it was, I incorrectly set my alarm, so I missed it, which I wasn't, I guess, too upset about, because that was a very early game for me. I saw the last 5 minutes, but then I rewatched the replay.
You watched it on, how'd you watch it?
Oz.com.
Stream okay?
Yeah. I don't understand how Go90 can't get it together.
How was the attendance? Anything announced?
Yeah, it was 6,000. And that's the main difference between both of these games, was that whoever has the better record is hosting the championship game, which I don't know if I'm such a big fan of that. I like the idea of a neutral site, but I think you need to, and I think we talked about this, I think you need to be better at promoting it and better at having, a week. You don't even have to necessarily have a week long of things, but have something that draws people in throughout the week leading up to it.
You were talking about shirt for the champion. You found a shirt for that, right?
I did find a shirt. They finally came out with shirts.
Okay.
And I was
Anything
correct.
else you've seen as far as promotion of that game or championship? How?
I think it was pretty typical. It's difficult because it's in a different country, so there's not. I don't get as much exposure to all of it as I would think those in Australia do. But in terms of the Melbourne City social media side of things, they were all over it. They started that campaign of it's not women's football, it's not men's football, it's just football. So they combined all of their accounts into one pretty much. And the Melbourne City women and the Melbourne City men are now just for game updates versus kind of separate news throughout the whole season. So that's pretty cool. I like that idea.
Did you follow the W League Twitter account the whole season?
I did.
You didn't get annoyed with it?
I just would scroll past it. It kind of helped in a way because you would see the individual teams. Well, it did get really annoying, but it was easy enough to just scroll past. And it was good because it gave me updates, but yeah, it was.
Annoying.
But I was okay with it. And I was correct. Fishlock scored in the 35th minute, and then Jody Taylor scored in the 75th minute.
Yeah. What was the celebration like?
I mean, they just showed the on-field celebration. It was pretty typical celebration. It's their third win in a row, and it's as long as Melbourne City's been in the league, they've won the championship. So I'm sure that they celebrated very well afterwards. But it was difficult because it wasn't you're not going to have a lot of Melbourne City fans there. You're in Sydney. And you play where Sydney FC plays. But it was good on my end because my team won.
Are you going to get a shirt?
I am going to get a shirt. I just haven't ordered one yet.
You paying euros or pounds?
It says dollars on there. I'm just getting into their shop, but I know that. Oh, and they're actually kind of cool. They say 3-peat on them and everything. It's in dollars. I know when I've seen it before, but I don't know if Australian dollars are different dollars or if it automatically converted the amount for me on their website. It won't let me purchase a t-shirt right now. Beautiful. There were some
Yep. No, go ahead.
There were some injuries that came out of that. I know I talked with you about it. Lydia Williams, I haven't heard anything as far as an update with that one goes, but she was pretty much playing on one leg since the 62nd minute of that game. She had come up with some amazing saves. Kaya Simon went down also at the same time. She is actually out of the Algarve Cup with a hamstring injury.
So, Michelle Bedos is in Seattle. Their preseason roster.
Okay.
In goal. The other potential starter for goal there in Seattle is Lydia Williams. Backline potentials are Lauren Barnes, Yael Averbush, Kristen McNabb, Megan Oyster, Maddie Bauer, Kristen Westfall is there, Steph Catley. So, where does she stack up against Houston Dash, Lydia Williams in Seattle?
Well, in terms of
performance,
her performance with Houston,
your thoughts on her in Houston were
that I don't think she played well in Houston. But
so now in Seattle with that line. So there, would you say bottom 3 starting goalie in her time in Houston?
Oh, I don't know if I would say that, but there's probably a potential of that.
Yeah, I think if we went through that list of goalies, you would have no problem putting her 8, 9, or 10. So now Seattle, what is her potential there with that back line from what you've seen from her W League performance?
Yeah. Well, you named 2 people that already play together or that played together at Melbourne City. Catley and Lauren Barnes played together. Both of them are incredible, and you can add them onto the list of who I'm looking for this NWSL season. And that completely changes the game, I think. If you look at the back line for Australia and for Melbourne City, you can see why Lydia Williams had performed so well. But I think just watching her play, I think she seemed more comfortable in net with Melbourne City. And that obviously that's going to be coming from if you have at least a semi-decent back line. So I'm on the Melbourne City site right now. It is costing as much as the t-shirt is to ship it to me. It's not happening.
The price of the shirt is as much as it costs to ship.
Yep.
Huh. So that's not happening, you said?
No, that's not happening. So wait for it to hit eBay.
Looking at these other preseason rosters, there's a couple of very interesting goalie competitions that I think are going to come down and to be decided throughout the preseason. One of those for Sky Blue, where they have Caroline Casey, Casey Murphy, and Kaylin Sheridan as their 3 goalies.
Yep.
North Carolina still with D'Angelo and Roland. I think that's an interesting goalie matchup, and I've always been a fan of D'Angelo, but Roland proved herself last year to be the better of the 2. So another one to keep your eye on. We mentioned Seattle, where in my mind, Lydia Williams will beat out Michelle Betos. We'll see if Williams can handle this NWSL pressure, which she succumbed to in Houston. Emily Boyd, the rookie in Chicago, probably going to displace Michelle Dalton there as a backup eventually.
Really?
Doesn't happen right away.
Okay.
Will be interesting to see.
Mm-hmm.
Nair still being the number one. Aubrey Bledsoe and Kelsey Weiss, both with starting experience. They will be in Washington. Something to watch there for the Spirit. Ashlyn Harris, Haley Kottmeyer, two decent goalies. Ashlyn Harris, we'll see if her age will start to play any factor. She gets another year older. Keep an eye on that. And coming back from an injury in Houston, we do have Jane Campbell, but Sammy Jo Prudhomme, who I was impressed with last year and in college at USC. What kind of push will she give the now sophomore Jane Campbell?
Mm-hmm.
And then in Utah, I did not know that they picked up Abby Smith, but they do have the Breakers goalkeeper there. And that was a team that I was really expecting to draft a goalie last year, let alone this year. They opted not to, and they have two goalies on the roster. Oh, did they draft Proctor? Or they just
they at least she's on. Yeah.
Okay, so that might be my number one most interesting to watch is Nicole Barnhart, who I fully believe it's her kind of her run has went very well, but it is past now. Abby Smith, who I was never terribly impressed with Boston, but she always put up good enough numbers to continue to be a starter there for the Breakers. And now EJ Proctor, who was the second or third best goalie in the 2018 draft class. Does she get her chance to start there in Utah? And what will their move from FCKC to Utah do for them? What does their backline look like? Looks like they have Elby and Miramontes, both young players there. Arlett, a young player. Brittany Taylor, Katie Bowen, and then Kelly O'Hara and Becky Sauerman. So a solid backline with experience. Becca Morrow's coming in off the bench, but keep an eye on that for sure. Their goaltender situation in Utah.
Yeah, so I was just not to get away from Utah, but I was just looking at the rosters, and I was able to find something that had not only the rosters but the actual games for preseason.
Mm-hmm.
And the Chicago Red Stars play Marquette and Wisconsin, but those two.
Again?
Say that again.
Play Wisconsin again.
Mm-hmm. But those are the only two out of all of their preseason games that are closed to the public.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Are they playing Wisconsin and Verona again, or where's that?
I have no idea. That's what I was trying to find out, and then I saw that they were closed to the public. So at the end of the day, I guess it really doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a couple of years ago they played in Verona at the Verona, Wisconsin's high school or park there.
Yeah.
So
they're probably closed. They're probably closed because they know it could give them a run for their money, I think. I would hope not, but I don't know why they would be closed to the public.
So you're saying the Red Stars are bottom half of the league this year?
No, I'm not saying that. I'd be worried if it was the Houston Dash going up against one of those two teams. But the Red Stars, no.
Uh-huh.
No.
Okay. Well, that offseason will unfold. We'll have topics come up and talk about them as they happen. In WHL and rest of hockey. Basically another episode dedicated to hockey. Probably have Marcus back on, and we'll dive into those subjects and sort of hit on anything else that comes up over the next couple of weeks. The Olympics are winding down. Maybe talk about a few other events that take place there. And softball season starts for me on Monday, so maybe I'll keep you updated on how that goes. So that's to be talked about in future episodes. First night, anything else from you?
Nope.
Okay. Got some good soccer talk in, so I know you've been dying for that.
Yeah.
So check that box tonight. And we thank you for stopping by the Hera Press Box.